We're joined now by the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, Ron Johnson, also on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Sir, thank you so much for being with us. And I know that this was a briefing that you had with Defense Secretary Ash Carter, I believe, if that's right, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, other top intelligence voices. What can you tell us? What can you share from that?
Well, I can share that your reporting on this, incident in Istanbul is pretty accurate. You're getting the facts correct, and we do not know yet who the perpetrator is. Nobody's claimed credit for it. It has all the hallmarks of ISIS, and so that's what we know. We also know that as long as ISIS continues to exist, these threats are going to continue, and we're going to see more and more of these tragedies, and it's depressing how frequently they're occurring.
Especially with John Brennan saying today that he would be very surprised if ISIS isn't planning something similar in the U.S. Do you know of anything in the works?
They still always say that there's no credible, specific credible threat. But I would refer to you to CIA Director Brennan's testimony a couple of weeks ago in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee, where he said that our efforts have not reduced ISIS's terrorism capability and global reach, and they remain a formidable, resilient, and largely cohesive force. Now that's really pretty depressing after 22 months of effort. This is 22 months after President Obama laid out America's goal as it relates to ISIS, which was to degrade and defeat them. We haven't defeated them. We're nibbling around the edges. We made some progress, but I continue to use the analogy of a beehive. If you've got a beehive out in your backyard, you can go out and poke with a stick and do some damage to it, but in many respects you make it more dangerous. The better thing is to take out the hive. We need to take out ISIS, or else we're going to continue to lose more and more of our freedoms. Look what we're talking about right now. Extending the security zones, it's just going to create another pinch point, reduce our freedoms further. We've got to get serious about actually accomplishing President Obama's goal, which is defeating ISIS.
How concerned are you, especially as we go into this travel weekend, about security at U.S. airports?
We always remain concerned. So it's extremely important for every American citizen to have a heightened sense of alert status. If you see something, you have to say something. I think what we've already seen in the past is people, because of political correctness, are a little concerned about saying something. We can't be. These threats are real. They're growing. And it's the world we live in today, and I'm getting sick of it. Personally, I'm getting sick of it. I actually remember many years ago being able to go through an airport, hop on a plane without having a body search or going through an advanced imaging technology machine or a metal detector. We're getting numb to the effect of Islamic terror in our lives, and we all need to get sick of it, and we need to demand that we actually defeat it.
The difference is very clear as you go through those checkpoints. I can attest to that as well. Expanding the security perimeter. The Ataturk airport, that's what they had there. In the U.S., generally speaking, you get out at the curb, out of the cab, or out of the car you came in, and you walk through doors, you check in, then you go to your security checkpoint. As soon as you would get out of the curb, there would be an initial checkpoint before even checking in. Is that something you are behind?
There's going to be another pinch point, another gathering of citizens.
So you don't see what's gained. You don't see what's gained.
I think the better approach, and I know DHS is beefing up training for the airport authorities and local police officers that have that security responsibility. I'm a big proponent of increasing the number of K-9 units. If you're concerned about potentially bomb threats or drugs or other threats, there's no technology that beats the nose of a dog. So I would dramatically increase that. We probably got, actually operational less than 1,000 K-9 units tasked for this particular task. We should double, triple, or quadruple that. I think that actually would improve our security. Now it costs money, but let's not be penny wise and pound foolish on this.
Was there any talk today? You were in this briefing. When I think of the arrivals area, which is where it appears these attackers came through, and of, generally speaking, a lone TSA agent monitoring that area where it's the final, it's where you leave if you're arriving into the airport and then you go beyond a certain point, you can't turn back. There seems to be some vulnerability there. Is there any concern and any plan to address that?
I know Admiral Neffinger is really doing a top-to-bottom review. He's been on the job about a year. I think they are looking at a different layered approach across the board in terms of what we need to do in terms of airport security, because that remains a target of Islamic terrorists, is really attack that vulnerability in terms of air traffic and air travel. So we need to keep looking at that. But again, I'll go back to the point, so much of these secure briefings are hearings with other administration officials. They're claiming some progress against ISIS, and that's true. We are making progress. but not fast enough. And as long as ISIS exists, as long as they hold that territory, they'll be able to claim that caliphate. They're going to be perceived as winners. They're going to continue to inspire the type of activity we saw in Orlando and San Bernardino and now again in Turkey. This is depressing how frequent these things are becoming. We've got to take that threat seriously, and we've got to defeat ISIS.
I have many more questions for you, Senator Ron Johnson. Again now with the Senate Homeland Security Committee Chairman, Senator Ron Johnson. Thanks for coming back to talk with us. And I do want to know just the bigger picture here of what your biggest concern is at this point. Is it a lone wolf ISIS-inspired attack for the U.S., or would it be more an ISIS-directed or an al-Qaeda-directed attack?
Well, both are possible. I think how the history's been in America, it's been that lone wolf-inspired terrorist. And, of course, ISIS, there's no doubt about it, we made progress, so it's more difficult to get into Iraq and Syria. And so ISIS is responding, they're evolving, they're metastasizing, they're saying, don't come here. It's difficult to come join the fight here in Iraq and Syria. So kill in place, kill where you are. And so people are taking them up on their directive. And that's extremely difficult for public safety officials to track those people. I mean, we're seeing it time and time again. It's, what do you do with the not guilty yet? We can do postmortems on these things. We can, Monday morning quarterback. But it's enormously difficult in a free society where people have constitutional rights. We have freedom of speech. How do you deal with that? So from my standpoint, you can discuss all these things and people distract with different non-solutions. We have to defeat ISIS. We have to go right back to where this is all occurring and recognize the mistakes we've made. Not leaving a stabilizing force behind in Iraq, I mean, that is a strategic blunder of historic proportions. ISIS was allowed to rise from the ashes of what was a thoroughly defeated al-Qaeda in Iraq. Now we're dealing with consequences. And as we were discussing earlier, President Obama is not allowing his military personnel to utilize the resources that they could bring to bear to make sure that ISIS is defeated a whole lot sooner than what they may be defeated. We had testimony from Brent McGurk said that back in September 2014, when President Obama laid out that goal of defeating ISIS, there was a 3-year plan to do so. Well, we're 22 months in that plan, and we haven't even pushed them out of Iraq, and they're going to be much more difficult to push out of Syria because we don't have a governing authority that's really cohesive that is supporting us in Syria like we do in Iraq.
Senator Ron Johnson, thank you so much for coming basically from this briefing that you got and just discussing your concerns with us in the lay of the land. Thank you so much.